виголосив доповідь в нашому університеті для студентів журналістики про міжнародну політику, про міжнародне місце Австрії у політиці і так далі. Сьогодні пан доктор Якуб Форст-Баталья виголосить доповідь на тему «Вплив Другого Ватиканського Собору на суспільство і політику в Австрії та Східній Європі». Перед тим, як я запрошую його до слова, дозвольте коротенько його представити. Отже, доктор Якуб Форст-Баталья після закінчення гімназії вивчав історію, славістику і філософію у Віденському університеті, захистив докторат в Інституті східноєвропейської історії, а після цього працював в Інституті славістики Віденського університету. Був учасником багатьох наукових проєктів Віденського університету, Австрійської академії наук, автор культурно-історичного туристичного довідника для подорожуючих Польщею та Угорщиною, автор монографії «Польський Відень», працював над виданням чисельних наукових публікацій, часописів до історії Центральної і Східної Європи, брав участь у програмах Австрійського радіо та телебачення. Особливими науковими зацікавленнями його є Габсбурзька монархія, Польща, Галичина, Богемія, питання національності, міжнародні відносини в 18-20 століттях. В 1981 році він розпочав працю в Міністерстві закордонних справ Австрії на посаді дипломата в Москві, де він працював від 1982 до 1984 років, у Мадриді від 1986 до 1989 року, в Празі від 1989 до 1995 року, в Талліні був австрійським послом в Естонії від 2001 до 2006 років. З жовтня 2011 року він є директором Австрійського культурного форуму в Києві. Володіє німецькою, це його рідна мова, французькою, англійською, іспанською, італійською, польською, російською і чеською мовами, також пасивно словацькою і українською. Крім цього, як він сьогодні зізнався, він є великим прихильником, чи йому надзвичайно подобається Львів, так що він належить до фан-групи Львова. І зараз мені дуже приємно його щиро запросити до слова.
Дуже дякую Українському католицькому університету за запрошення. Добре розумію українську мову, but I would rather speak English. It comes still a little bit easier to me than to speak Ukrainian. But afterwards, if you have any remarks, please feel free to do that in Ukrainian as well, or in Polish or in whatever. Yes, when I'm speaking to you today, well, I'm not a theologian, yes. I'm a diplomat, a historian, an eyewitness of not only what happened within the church and the churches in the last decade, especially what happened in Central and Eastern Europe. And I'm an Austrian, so but I feel very, very close to you and to the countries in question, and the fate of the church is important to me. I'm a Roman Catholic believer. I was that through all my life and my family, and well, I think that it's not possible to or to overestimate the political, social, moral and intellectual impact and the long-lasting influence of the Council Vatican II, not only on religious life, but in general also on social and political life in Europe and in the world. As Pope John XXIII used to say before the council was inaugurated, it should serve to open the windows to introduce fresh air within the church. I remember very well, I was 12 years old in 1962 when the council started, and we were speaking a lot of that in my family, when my grandfather was a historian, my father a philologist, and so we, let's say, in those, if I may say, say so, let's say Catholic intellectual circles in Austria, that was a subject that seemed to be enormously important. And also to me, well, as a schoolboy in the gymnasium, it was heard that every day, yes, and all the names that were important of the different cardinals, especially of the Pope, who was very popular at this time. John the 23rd was an incredible person, and so someone who attracted a lot of hopes. As in general, let's say sometimes you say that the 60s and also the Council was a period of such an extreme optimism. Yes, it was the period, well, exactly 17 years after the end of World War II, and so to say, well, in the West, recovery, you know, peace and some openness, something new, some fresh air. In general, the 60s are a very interesting period. If you think historically what it meant, also, well, it was, and this is important also in those church relations and especially in this context with East and West. In the 60s, at the same time, you had a period of still of some tensions. If you think of the construction of Berlin Wall, of the Cuban crisis, for instance, and then the beginning of the Vietnam War. But on the other hand, it was a period of détente, and it's exactly in this historical context that you have to place it, and also to place what was. A matter of the discussion yesterday and today here, what it meant for the Eastern churches, for the unions that were very badly off as a church, because officially they didn't exist. Yeah, after the With Synod of 1946. And but it was there, and on the other hand, this attempt to open up, to start some contact and some dialogues. For me, it's I remember that the two were very well. In 1964, for instance, when the mutual ban was lifted, it was a symbolic act between Pope Paul VI and Patriarch Athenagoras. Well. After more than 900 years, 910 years, to start to talk with each other. Of course, in this context, the situation of the unions, that could exist in the West, but of course as a diaspora church, but it couldn't exist here on the ground, was particularly delicate. Yes. What to do, also this was mentioned today, what to do for this church, or what to do for Rome. Either you want to have some kind of dialogue with the Soviet power, necessary to make life a little bit more livable to the churches. Or, well, you could continue not to talk, and then, well, that was the basic question. There were two opinions at this time, but we will speak of that. What is important, I would say now, especially the general, what is for me and in my remembrance and the memory of my generation, so to say, of Catholics in general, what I think is especially important as a result of this Vatican II. Well, on the one hand, you have the eternal message of the Church, and you have, so to say, laws that are divine, but you have laws that are human, and the matter is how to translate this message with the wording of today and to answer to the problems of nowadays society. Because that's always the dichotomy of the church, well, since 2000 years. The one, on the one hand, let's say the eternal or the metaphysical aspect, on the other hand, the very down-to-earth social, political aspect, how people live, because it's in a pure spiritual world, it's impossible to live for human beings, but in a purely material world, the whole spiritual aspect is missing, and the sense of life is not there. Well, why are we here, and what are we for? What for are we here? What is our goal? So what was pointed out was, let's say, that the people of God in general, not just the clergy, all believers, so to say, in the sense of a common priesthood, are linked in a responsibility for church and universe, common responsibility. Of course, the Pope is, of course, the head of the church, but also in collegiality with the bishops. Well, I'm not talking about the question of conciliarism, which was already a subject in the Middle Ages. You know better than me that I mean, this cohabitation and coexistence between the Holy Father and the collectivity of bishops is also an old problem. And how is it solved? We had counter popes in the Middle Ages and so on. That was overcome by chance. But the problem how to establish this relationship is there, yes. And there were responses more in the sense of absolute power that was not aligned to the public sphere, let's say in the 17th, 18th century after the Reformation, but on the other hand, and in the 19th century as a defensive position. But this is not something that can always prevail. Of course, Vatican I has given us the dogma of infallibility of the Pope in matters of belief and of behavior, principal matters, but it's not an absolute dogma for every opinion that is expressed. Well, so the other proposition compared with Vatican I, Vatican II, which was, by the way, the first council that was largely covered in the media, that was, so to say, well known in the whole world, whereas, of course, the different commissions were not very openly discussing everything, but in front of the public, I mean, but it was accompanied by the general public, and this message was openness, respect and dialogue with other Christians, that means ecumenism, but also with Jews and with non-Christians like Muslims. And even dialogue with non-believers and other ideologies, as far, let's say, with all men of good will, so to say. So, but freedom of religion, belief and consciousness, and human rights and human dignity, well, it was expressed later on also in the encyclical letter of Paul VI in 1967, are such principles that prevail. Of course, in the famous Pastoral Constitution Gaudium et Spes in December 65, before the end of the council, this freedom for freedom and conscience, freedom for research, also opinion, art and politics is expressed. Already before, the meaning of responsibility in the encyclica Pacem in Terris, also in 1963, that's all in the same spirit, the whole system, or then also Dignitatis Humana in 1965. Of course, the theologians know that all that by heart. But I think that is important to everybody to see the context. And well, much later, in John Paul II, wrote this Redemptor Hominis in 1979, and also pointing out what is basic also for the development of the situation in Europe and in Eastern Europe. The freedom of religion is the criterion for respect of human rights. So there cannot be human rights, true human rights respected in a country if the freedom of religion is not respected. Yes, that's and certainly it is an objective criterion, because the one goes together with other freedoms or with lack of freedom. Well then, as a result of Council of Vatican II, in 1968 you have Humane Vitae, yes? Well, there was also the matter of, well, it rejected, for instance, contraception, but it underlined freedom of conscience. And so it's the matter that gave, so to say, way to different interpretations later on, according also to bishop conferences in several countries. So, to what extent can the individual, or is it free to appreciate what he should do? Well, sometimes in this discussion, the later things were mixed up because. Of course, abortion and contraception are not absolutely not the same thing, and so. But while on both sides, let's say for pro and contra, there was some lack of clarity in that. But what I mean is important. The role of the individual was elevated. Yes, the moral role. Well, in general, aggiornamento, that was the magical word. From Italian was prevailing. So humility, dialogue with the world, and then on that in different documents it was pointed out, not in Mater et Magistra as well, and also this linked with concept of solidarity and of democracy, of course. What is another very important thing, which I mentioned shortly, is ecumenism. Well, so the principle unitatis redintegratio. Well, so there are dissenting brothers, but they are no longer heretics. Yes, in the other, let's say the Orthodox or even also the Protestants would rather say, well, formerly we were talking of schismatics and of heretics. I learned that at school. Yes, I had a very good professor of religion, but very conservative as well. Well, he taught us a lot of things in general culture and in history of the church. Unfortunately, are not taught any longer in religion nowadays. But for instance, this concept is important. So the church is full of respect also for the Muslims, even that was said in Nostra Aetate. And well, what the role of church in society is maybe to give an example, but not to dominate. Yes, and this is of course something that makes differences compared with the past. What is also important that let's say the opposition between classical opposition between the Bible and natural scientists is overcome. Yes, there is no contradiction. In fact, it's a matter of interpretation, rather complementary approaches. Yes, rather spiritual and experimental. Yes, already a great French Catholic thinker, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, he was already explaining that before Vatican II. He was much criticized by that, but now he's also totally accepted. What is very, very important for moral but for political reasons is, of course, this principle of dialogue and of mutual respect. If you are thinking of the Jews, for instance, yes, in the reflections on covenant and mission, yes, there is an old covenant of the Jews with God, and there is a community in this covenant. And it was clearly said that the accusation of God's murder, so to say, is no longer valid. An Austrian Catholic writer and historian, Friedrich Herr, called this the Jews God's first love. Yes, and in this sense, there is a new approach in the relations of the Church towards the Jews. So it was already mentioned in other presentations today, but I repeat it because it seems basic to me, that John Paul II, as well as Benedict XVI, clearly declared themselves against anti-Semitism. Like current Pope Benedict XVI said, the Catholic Church is compelled to tolerance, respect, friendship and peace among nations, cultures and religions. And there is no theological justification for anti-Semitism. Well, both popes visited the synagogues in Rome. John Paul visited Jerusalem and the state of Israel. And there is a new, let's say, mutual respect and dialogue between Christians and Jews, which is called also special relationship. And that is something extremely important. Well, to remind should be basic that Jesus Christ in his human nature, of course, was a Jew, and as Saint Paul was started as a Jewish preacher, and that's a clear thing. Later on, it was the opening to the so to say world church, to the Catholic Church in the classical Greek meaning of the world. In relations to the Orthodox, well, also Bartholomew praised that Vatican II created conditions for unity of Christians, and the Pope asked in 2001, so still John Paul II, for forgiveness for sins against the Orthodox brothers. Well, a problem exists, and that's especially interesting for the Greek Catholics, for the Uniats. It's the so-called Uniat question, which in relation to the Orthodox, well, there is no reason to hide that. There is the problem of the canonical territory, the so-called. And especially for the Russian Orthodox Church, this concept of canonical territory, if strictly interpreted, knows no exception. So there is the old matter that the Orthodox, well, they don't like the Uniats, so primitively said the Union as such. Also for historical reasons, it was the old conflict, so to say, between Moscow and Poland, or Poland and Lithuania. And if you think of the Union of Brest, 1596, was the ecclesiastical consequence of the Union of Lublin of 1560-69. That is something that was then revoked by the famous, or well, sadly famous Synod of Lviv in 1946, that under pressure of the Stalinist regime, but with, of course, the help, the support of the official Russian Orthodox Church, or the Orthodox Church, was so dissolved, and the Uniats were submitted to Moscow. I can tell you one story of my own experience. I was here, for instance, on a visit in Lviv in I think it was 1984, when I was serving in Moscow, and I went to the Mass to the St. George's Cathedral, and at the entrance there were a lot of strange persons taking notes and making photographs, so it was rather evident who that was. Then I assisted at the Mass. It was very well visited. There were a lot of people. Afterwards, I went behind to the sacristy, and I started talking with the priest. They were very open-minded, and they said me immediately, just that you know, officially we are Orthodox, but in fact we are Catholics, and we are so to say unit. We are Ukrainian Catholic. Just for the paper, for the KGB, we are Orthodox. They told me. So it was. Well, it was before Gorbachev. Yes, it was the period of Chervenko, but the feeling was clear. Well, we knew that. Yes, but. It was so clearly expressed, so that also people in this period were not that as much afraid as they used to be before. So it was a vivid church, when, whereas as a church it was a silent church. But well, what Rome wanted to start was dialogue with the East. It was pointed out sometimes the fact that some of the venerable gentlemen, of the reverends and of the bishops were not very happy reminding themselves of this dialogue, because it meant that, so to say, over the head of the unions there were contacts with Moscow. Well, it was a kind of, if you like to say that, I don't say it in a critical meaning, but as a concept, a kind of realpolitik of the Vatican. You had firstly to deal with the given conditions. There was Khrushchev in his strange tactic that were cold and hot. He sent, also there was the word today of an American diplomat who went to Moscow, that's true, but there was also the journey of Khrushchev's son-in-law Arjubey to Rome, and he paid a visit to Pope John XXIII. He even made a proposal of creating diplomatic relations, yes, but on so to say on Soviet conditions, and that was not acceptable to the church at this time. But some things were given, and for instance the possibility for the famous metropolite, whom we cherish very much, Joseph Slipy, to be released from Siberia was a certain concession of Khrushchev. Of course, the idea was the Soviets thought he's a broken old man, he will go to Rome and he will sit quietly and make no problems. But he still was incredibly active, as you know. And that maybe was a miscalculation, but by the KGB. But anyway, they want to get rid of him. They thought at a low price, and then it will be presented as a big concession and so thing. But it was important. At the same time, the Ostpolitik, or as it's called, well, it was called like that for the German Eastern policy, West German, but it's also applicable to the Vatican. Right, the famous State Secretary Agostino Casaroli made certainly progresses. It was possible in Hungary to re-establish some dioceses. Maybe that the bishops, well, it's not my role to criticize them, but they were said to be on the, so to say, paying list of the state police. But, well, it was even, when I was serving in Moscow, people made, well, not very friendly jokes about the Orthodox hierarchy and said probably most of them are members of KGB, the Metis, if they at least believe in God. But, well, I had contacts with them where I cannot say what they were thinking, but they were very polite and all that. No, but this and in Vienna, there was created an organization Pro Oriente. Cardinal König, I will speak about him in a short moment, played an important role in that. Well, and another problem was what to do with important Catholic hierarchy. We were speaking in the last days, especially about the unions, but the Roman Catholics in Czechoslovakia. Cardinal Beran was also, he was then released in 1963. In Hungary, famous Cardinal Vincenti, he was a refugee at the American legation in Budapest. It was not an embassy at this time, it was just a legation. And well, Vincenti considered himself as being a martyr, being the conscience of the Hungarian church, and he wouldn't leave his home country. But under the influence of Cardinal König and of the Vatican, he finally gave in and left Hungary. It was in 1971 to go to Austria. Well, first to Vienna, to the Forst-Battaglia, and then to Mariazell, Magna Mater, Austria at Hungary, well, our very sacred place in Styria. And then he ended his life. He was a very unhappy man. He didn't believe a lot, I think, in the council and in talks with the communists. He was rather of the opinion of the famous French bishop Marcel Lefebvre, who was against, against this opening, very skeptical about Vatican II in general, and said in a call in 1982, you don't talk to the devil either. So the devil was communism. There was no possible compromise with them, not even if that could serve certain, I'd say, situations of the church, of individual clergymen. What was something that comes out, I would say, directly from Vatican II is the whole, we had John the 23rd, then we had Paul the 6th, and then, things are developing. In 1978 came the revolutionary news in 16th of October that the non-Italian, for the first time since 1522 or to 2023, since Hadrian VI of Utrecht was elected Pope, and that was, people didn't understand what is that, whatever. They thought he was from Africa somewhere, but then they discovered he was a white man, and the Pole, the European, was elected Pope. And this was a basic moment. I mean, you felt it's something special when he was elected. But then, very quickly, it developed, and you could see it's something more. That's a man who is, let's say, quite an outstanding personality, and represents something, or starts to be active in a way that was practically unthinkable to a pope up to this time, and so to go out in the world. So, but this is a direct consequence. He was very consequent. Well, he was not, as you know, so-called progressive, but what does it mean, progressive and conservative in the church? It means something, of course, but it is too cheap, too easy to judge things in that way. He was in fact a kind of a revolutionary, yes. I remember I was an eyewitness because I was then working as a freelancer with the Austrian television in 1979. But at the first visit of the Pope in Poland, we were with him all the time, the team, and so today it was mentioned on the place of victory in Warsaw, what was said, so I was also there, and I remember that very well. You could feel something like, also for people, let's say, who were maybe not religious, they thought it's something, and for someone who is a believer especially, that something that you call the Holy Spirit. Well, we have this concept, we cannot materialize it like God cannot be materialized, but you thought there was an enormous spiritual force there, and that maybe probably the Holy Spirit to have inspired him and to make things move. Yes, it was for the Polish population it was extremely important. The communist regime at this time, it was Edward Gehrig who was in power, so somehow could not refuse the Pope. yes, because he was also for the Poles a national hero. And well, he was the Pope from Poland. He was not the Polish Pope, but okay, he was somebody who gave force to the Polish nation, and by that an example to others. Communist authorities from other neighboring countries wanted to impede people from going to Poland. There were ridiculous measures in Czechoslovakia, for instance, to refuse transit visa to people who wanted to go for Westerners who wanted to go to Poland, when people just took the plane and then it was settled. So, but there was an uneasiness, yes. Maybe the Polish government underestimated the consequences it would have, or that they were fatalists, they couldn't avoid it. Well, it was this first visit was the basic visit, and something that gave way to other developments, and among others, where there are many reasons why finally the communist regimes in Eastern Europe backed down. There's a whole complex of reasons, and very down-to-earth reasons, economic, social reasons, political reasons, but there are moral and spiritual reasons. A system that is so empty as the communism was in this time. You know, in 1945, maybe that different people had believed after the horrors of the Second World War, of Nazi occupation and so on, that some new society, some social justice or something could come out of it. But that was over for a long time. In 1956 in Hungary, 68 in Czechoslovakia, you had a lot of communist or, let's say, leftist persons in Czechoslovakia. This end of Prague Spring and intervention, that was the end for the communist intellectual life in the country. There was normalization. It was formally everybody was agreeing, yes, except for the dissidents later on, but the basis was cut off, and the whole Dubček-oriented leftist intelligentsia made a divorce with the Communist Party and the communist regime, and things come together. The concept of living in truth that was forwarded by the Pope as well was exactly the same that was repeated then. Also, when I had the chance, together with my wife, by the way, who is here, to follow the Velvet Revolution in Prague in 1989. So after the end of First Solidarity in Poland, that was not possible without the Pope, or that was influenced by the Pope, by his visit by the force, yes. As Lech Wałęsa also said, he wouldn't have succeeded like that. And Gorbachev also said that the downfall of communism was especially, let's say, hurried on by the role of the Pope. So this role of living in truth, or to say that the truth is winning, which, by the way, which is an irony, historical, is a concept of the Hussites, yes, of the 15th century, that was taken over by the first Czechoslovak Republic, by Thomas Masaryk, but that exactly came together, this moral category, with what the Pope was saying. And don't be afraid, don't fear anything, yes, to believe in human dignity and in the human person. And in fact, it was this continual lie that was the reason why intellectually, morally, communism had to end. And this is directly linked to not only, but one of the consequences of Vatican II, and one of the consequences of this policy of the Pope. This idea was also for the Pope identical with the idea of also European unification, to give a soul to Europe. Yes, the Pope has said it. Jacques Delors has said it as well. And so, let's say, from the Catholic side and from the laic side, there were things coming together, and the matter of human rights, of course, is common. It was also said by Chancellor Helmut Kohl. He thanked the Pope later on when he came to Germany because he was an advocate for human rights, for freedoms and social justice. That's something that was common also with the Catholic and Protestants. You see the Protestant movement, the anti-communist in East Germany. Now we have a German president, Joachim Gauck, who comes from this movement, who is a pastor. These things come together. I think in Poland of the ethic of solidarity of Josef Tischner, a splendid personality whom I happen to know shortly, and unfortunately he died then too early. And it was an expression of this fight for freedom. Well, dialogue was already carried on in the 60s with Leszek Kolakowski, Milan Machowicz, and so on. Also in Czechoslovakia, you have a small group of very convinced Catholics, but they have very engaged persons. And it was quite the late Cardinal Tomaszek, was also an incredible personality with over 90. He was alone in his palace practically, but he was the conscience of the Czech Catholic Church. And people like Václav Mali, Professor Josef Zveržina, or then Thomas Schalik, whose book can be bought there. They have excellent theologians. So people were engaged in these new movements, and also Carter 77 without the Catholics and without the leftist people together who wouldn't have functioned. Well, coming back, if you allow me shortly, to Austria especially, and to Cardinal König. Well, König was, on the first hand, well, he was an architect of international relations, of rapprochement between East and West. This theory, this beautiful image of the two lungs of Europe that the Pope expressed, well, he, Cardinal König, and he's writing about that in his memoirs, and he says that the council was his basic life experience, and all that came after that. He thought, when he was saved from a car accident in Yugoslavia, that he should do something for this dialogue, East and West. And so he was very active in that. He was also active in making peace in Austria between the Socialist Party and the Catholic Church, together with Chancellor Bruno Kreisky. And well, in Austria, this situation of the freedom of opening of church, you have to distinguish between Western and Eastern societies. In Eastern societies where the church was persecuted or oppressed or in a difficult situation, when it was symbol of national identity, as in Poland, for instance, or in Croatia, or it was also oppressed, like in Czechoslovakia, or totally suppressed also, like here. It is something different than in Western societies, where people are never oppressed, but they have all the competition with other social propositions, so to say, and the participation literally. So the believer wants to be co-responsible for his church, and yes, but maybe one or two minutes more if you allow me. And out of that, we have a very a church of believers who want to have their role. Yes, we have this movement, we are the church, and the participation in civil society is important. We also have priests, yes, like Helmut Schüler and others. Maybe then if you have questions, we can talk about it. Well, who are not happy, let's say, on certain developments in the church, about opening, the matter of celibate, of participation of women, and so on plays a role. But let's be happy that people are so much engaged. You know, that they want to be Catholic, they want to participate, to make a religious life that seems better to them. Well, that was also what Cardinal König said in supporting a Belgian Jesuit, Jacques Dupuy, who wrote a book about what the Christian theology of religious pluralism, and well, pluralism means a lot. And this is in fact the main message of Vatican II. It's to see the balance between what is eternal and what is timely, and well, to see that the people of God needs a larger participation. But how to do is maintaining a certain order, discipline, and not religion a la carte for everybody, but at the same time a church that knows where she goes, that has a real role to play in modern society, not Staatskirchentum and from above, but that links freedom and responsibility, and that's what's the message, and that's what the message I wanted to give you. And thank you very much for your attention. And now, so please, if you have, well, it's up to you, but I'm ready to remarks or to questions in the languages that you prefer.
Славче, наскільки запитання, що, звичайно, ви праві, що кардинал Кенік був батьком відкриття цих двох легенів. Він не тільки батько цього відкриття, але і вибору кардинала Войтили на пост папи. Це, знаєте, такий відомий анекдот. Коли вже 4 тури проходять вибору конклави, 4 тури вибору папи не можуть обрати, кардинал Кенік підходить до кардинала Вишинського і каже: кардинале, а може еміненція, а може кардинал з Польщі? А наш кардинал Вишинський, примас Вишинський каже: ну, але я за старий. Але ж є другий ще.
Я знаю ту шутку. Well, I know this story very well. It's an old story. By the way, when König himself in his memoirs, he writes about Cardinal Wyszynski, whom he liked very much. But he said he was a man, a very serious man, who was very much concerned with the fate of the Polish Church. It's an enormous burden. You said today, I think it was you, that still he was considered by the population as being the Interrex. Well, in the old Polish kingdom, as we know, that the primate of Poland played the role of, so to say, of king in a period between two elected kings. So, well, in the People's Republic of Poland there was no kingdom, but as a moral leader of the nation. And for Cardinal Wyszynski, who was the leader of the strongest Catholic Church in the communist world, undoubtedly, well, he was very supportive of Karol Wojtyła, but he couldn't conceive that. Of course, maybe it's an anecdote. When König himself, in his memoirs, he says he was neither some representative of Politik. He just had a personal contact with Cardinal Vincenti and with others. He says. But he says Ostpolitik was a matter of Casaroli, and I was not a representative of the Vatican. Well, he takes it very strictly. Yes, he was not a diplomatic representative, but he was, so to say, a special envoy. You can call that. But that's possible. And he was never saying anything about this election of the Pope. He was strangely reluctant to do that. He was very much in favor of Karol Wojtyła to be elected, whom he praised enormously, but, as he writes, not criticizing the Pope himself, but let's say his entourage. He was disappointed, as he says it, very literally, by certain bishop nominations that occurred in Austria later on. Well, König is extremely outspoken in his last years in his writings, and very critical, well, constructively critical, but very critical towards Rome and the Church. I was even, recently I was reading this, I was astonished to what extent he was critical, of course, always staying, let's say, within the framework, of course, yes. But he was very happy for the Eastern policy of the Pope. Yes, that was also an enormous success, in fact, and it was not the question.
Чи ще запитання?